in leading an organization with an anti-racism mission, what is my role in decentralizing whiteness, in absolutely creating a culture where staff are charged with identifying and disrupting racism in the early learning world, knowing that the babies experience that oppression and bias if uninterrupted. And we do that work. We have those deep dialogues with our partners in communities. We have shifted the way that we interact with our funders. We have brought our board along and have entirely different expectations for who we engage with in that way. And we really think about our responsibility in growing our own leaders who beautifully will leave our organization and go elsewhere within the system. And, you know, on a personal level, it's about knowing that I have to give up power, right? I have to give up power. I am not the expert. I am never going to be able to do this. And it's not, and I'm not the right person to lead and to make the change unless I am in partnership, standing alongside and standing behind others. And, you know, as I think about sort of that incredible privilege I have, I'm keenly aware that I will absolutely step aside and make room for the next leader at my organization sooner than later, and ideally a leader of color to take us to a place that I can't take that organization. So knowing what I can do to shift the culture, to absolutely dismantle the policies and the practices that we have created over the 30 years of the life of the organization. I mean, we are an institution, and knowing that I will step aside when it is time. Absolutely.
I like that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and what I would say is I am forever going to be an educator. And the best mentorship I got in my prep program at Washington State was from the leader of the program, who said two things. One's a little outdated. You better be more entertaining than Cheers and The Cosby Show. And that tells you how old I am already, because at the time it was like, these kids have TV and they've got cable, and they're like, you got to be more entertaining than that if you really want to hold them. Well, that's changed. They stream now. But the other thing that Chris said to me was, she said, we're just getting to understand what it means to differentiate instruction. This was back in the early 90s, but you know exactly how every child is different. So meet them where they are. And I've spent the better part of my career, where I was in a classroom or in community college administration or legislature, wherever, figuring out how to tell powerful stories to folks so that they could connect with it. So I'll just be super bold and crass with you all. We have to start with justice. And that is enough for 70 or 80% of the people we work with. They see injustice and they say, I want to do something about it. There are folks who say, not enough. Right or wrong, we live in a world where people see injustice and they say, I'm okay with that. So I have to tell them stories about, well, here's what happens to your taxes when we don't have a system of justice that creates educational opportunity. Here's how you don't get workers. Here's what happens to the criminal justice system. Here's what happens to the human services social safety net. Here are the impacts that I'm going to make personal for you. If you can't find justice as your core purpose, let me sell you on your own self-interest. Mm-hmm. And so I try to talk to everybody at any level in which they're going to connect. And when I was teaching, I did this with students. I could give some students a concept, they were racing, and others needed a little depth. And sometimes it was, I mean, Angela knows this, Dr. Petrie knows this, like literally come in afterwards. I need 12 minutes with you to go through that lesson one by one, because you've got it. I just need that time with you. But everyone needs something that's a little different in terms of a layer of depth. And it's frustrating as hell that we ever have to get to that second and third layer. But we live in a world where we do sometimes. And so you asked me what I try to do with privilege. I try to be in rooms where people don't necessarily think justice is enough motivation for them. Mm-hmm. And I give them selfish reasons, use that term how you want, to find purpose in equitable opportunities. That's what I think the role is.
I love that.
Yeah, it is such an important question. And I think just building on what's being said, what I think about when I'm thinking about how I can use the privilege, unearned privilege that I have, is to make sure that I'm walking the talk. There is so much performative allyship happening And I think for me, it is making sure that our actions, that especially given the power that I have in leading this national network, that the actions that we take match the talk, and our work has to be, it starts with creating and ensuring that we're working towards becoming an anti-racist organization, acknowledging that we're not there yet, and there may not be, it's a constant journey that we're working towards, working to, in all of our work, to center racial and ethnic equity throughout the network. In our grant making, we decided that we were going to start with our grant making to ensure that we'd start with women of color and leaders of color, and really prioritize them in our grant making, from how we choose vendors, all of the things that we do. Walking the talk is so critical. And I know that for me personally, for me, the way that I can model is modeling shared vulnerability. I've learned in public more times than I want to admit. I am learning in public and being able to use this privilege and be able to speak hard truths to people that that I can speak with, knowing our audiences, knowing who we're talking to, and asking those hard questions is something that I'll continue to do, and invite my colleagues and our network to hold me accountable for doing that. I don't always have to be the one telling the story. In fact, more often than not, I'm really trying to ensure that our network members get to tell their own stories, and using the platform, the incredible platform that I have, to be able to ensure that happens. But it's a constant learning journey, and it's been challenging. Sitting with the discomfort of my privilege, and constantly acknowledging and analyzing that and naming it is critical.